All right, well, we're going to get started, and more people will join us as the day goes on. My name is Liana Avendano, and I'm going to be your facilitator host for today, and I'm really, really excited to be here. Before we get started, I wanted to ask everybody if they could turn their cameras off if possible. It will just make for a little bit of an easier recording for us. So thank you if you're willing to do that. And I also just want to take a moment to acknowledge the grief and the hardships that we've all been experiencing over the last few weeks. I know that it's never easy. I don't think that white supremacy ever goes away, and it's happening every single day. But some weeks are just a little bit harder than others, and I want to be able to hold some of that grief and that pain that we've been experiencing and not just go on with our lives without acknowledging the ways that it shows up in our daily lives. And so I just want to make sure that I'm honoring that before we just dig into more conversations. But I do think it's important to continue interrupting that white supremacy by continuing to have these conversations and highlighting stories of people who may not necessarily fit in the dominant culture, because we are unique and awesome and beautiful, and we should be telling our stories. And I'm really excited to share some of the stories of some of the people in my community today. And so we'll get started. And I'm going to introduce myself first, do a short introduction of everybody on the panel, and then we'll jump into some questions. And I will try to leave some room for Q&A at the end. But this is my first panel that I've ever done, so I hope y'all can bear with me as I figure it out and see if I understand the timing of a panel. But I think it'll be great. So I know that my panelists are all really great and interesting, so at least if I blow it, they will have great things to tell you. So I'm just excited to get started. So to kick us off, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So my name is Liana Avendano, and I use they, them pronouns. And I am a non-binary, neurodivergent, Mexican child of immigrants. My laundry list of identities goes on and on. But that is the lens through which I do all of my work. And I am a facilitator and project manager for Construct the Present, which is a DEI facilitation, culture change and activation firm that is located in Portland. And this panel is brought to you by Construct the Present. We do all of our work through a trauma-informed intersectional lens, and we're always trying to highlight stories of people who we think are doing work from a mission, and that's what we're doing here today. This panel is highlighting people who identify as gender queer, gender fluid, gender curious, gender questioning, anything that falls into the identity of the gender norms not being within the binary. So anything that fits within anything outside of the gender binary. And so it's going to be a conversation between all of us. It's not super formal. We're going to hear a little bit about the work that people are doing and just get to know people. And so without further ado, I will introduce our panelists. And just to let everybody know, we are recording this session today. So just so y'all are aware of that. Alrighty, so I'll start off with our first panelist, Rio Palomares. They use they them pronouns, and they are a realtor at Living Room Realty. They are originally from Southern California. Shout out Southern California. I'm from Los Angeles, so I know what that's like. And after working in the service industry for over a decade, real estate became a natural next step in Rio's career. They are fierce, empathetic, and their good sense of humor becomes apparent within minutes of chatting with them. Our next panelist is Vashti Boyce. They use she, they pronouns, and they are the founder of Wild Iris Consulting. And Vashti holds a master's in humanistic psychology from the University of West Georgia, as well as an MBA in healthcare administration. Okay. And Vashti has been in the field of mental health for over 7 years across clinical research and administrative realms. Vashti's approach to Wild Iris is based on a holistic framework, never losing sight of the value of human experience, subjectivity, perspective, and relationship with the self and society. Lukas M. Soto uses they, them pronouns, and they are the principal owner at Lukas M. Soto Consulting. Lukas's background is in racial equity, community engagement, policy development, research, capacity building, strategic advising, cultural anthropology, and many other topics. I know this by experience of expertise that help them create impactful culture change. They are able to be effective in multicultural spaces by remaining heart centered and spirit led, and they look forward to co creating with you. And our last panelist is Shannon Walton-Clark, uses they, them pronouns, and they are chief of staff at the Beaverton Mayors Office. And Shannon received a graduate degree in government from Johns Hopkins University in May of 2018, and they have dedicated most of their professional and personal life to LGBTQ plus equality and advocacy, and they currently work as the chief of staff to Beaver Meriton Lacey Beatty, and they also serve as the board chair for the Westside Queer Research Center and an avid historian. And so that's just a little bit about them, but obviously we want them to tell their story, so they're going to be telling you a little bit more about themselves. And so we're going to get started. And let's kick it off. I'm going to ask us our first question, and I'll call on the first person, and then we can do a bit of a round robin. If you're feeling inspired to unmute and answer, please feel free to do so. And if not, I can always call on people. And so our first question is, what is your name, your pronouns, your role in company, and the work you do? And just anything you want to share with us that's important to you. And Rio, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. I'm super happy to be here and excited to get to hear the other stories. My name is Palomares. I use they, them pronouns. I am a non-binary Latinx person living in white-ass Portland. Also identify as a trans mask, dyke of a bitch. So all the things that you can think of, I'm that. I'm a realtor at Living Room Realty. I've been doing this for just over a year now. It's super challenging. And yeah, I'm happy to be here, and we need people like us. So that's why I'm here. And I'll pass it over to, let's do Lukas.
Yeah. And just as a preface, for whatever reason, my Wi-Fi doesn't have great bandwidth, so I'm on my phone. So you'll see me poke the mute on and off. My name is Lukas Soto. I use they, them pronouns in English, ella en español. Mixed race, Chilean Mapuche, Minnesota Chippewa, and Western European. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and I currently reside on the Pyramid Lake Paiute Reservation in Northwest Nevada, where we are starting a two-spirit farm. Like Liana said, I wear a lot of hats and I do a lot of different things. I'm kind of a nerd and I love learning. And so I just follow all the things I'm passionate about and then try and share that with my community to help empower and, ensure that we can live self-determined lives. I'll pass it to Vashti.
Hello, all. So yes, Vashti Boyce. I use she and they pronouns. And I am the owner and founder of Wild Hours Consulting, like Liana said, which is a leadership development consulting firm, really working with the folks who are in charge to make work less traumatic, since we don't have a choice to work in this capitalist dystopia, trying to make it as untraumatic as possible. I also provide early career professional development for women and non-binary folks of color, and our LGBTQ plus siblings. I volunteer at the Living Room for Youth. I am on their board. They're an organization in Clackamas County, Oregon, that works to support queer youth in kind of the rural-ish vestige of Clackamas County. For me, I identify as a queer femme, bisexual, pansexual, however you want to define those words. And I too am a first generation American, first on both sides of my family, to be born here in the States. So, and I'll throw it over to Shannon.
Big booty Judy bringing up the rear. That would be me. So Shannon Walton-Clark, I use they, them pronouns. I currently serve as the chief of staff to Beaverton Mayor Lacey Beatty. I'm also here as the chair of the Westside Queer Resource Center, which is a Washington County-based nonprofit that my wife and I have helped build and form and grow into the nascent little baby nonprofit that it is, seeking to bring education, resources, and advocacy for the LGBTQ plus community out here in Washington County. I identify as a queer, trans, non-binary person, obviously presenting mask of center. I'm coming up on my 1-year anniversary of my top surgery, which is kind of awesome, sneaking up on me. I'm also a devout Episcopalian. I'm a devout member of a faith community, which I think is a piece of our community that we don't talk about a lot, and I think can have some tension. I say that I live in a dualistic world. I've got 1 foot in one world and 1 foot in another, probably all of my identities. Proudly tattooed, pierced. My wife and I have been together. We're coming up on our 5th wedding anniversary. We've been together for almost a decade. So we are, she always likes to remind me, we are trying to be the people that the 13-year-old versions of ourselves needed to be. So I'm super stoked to be here, and happy to represent the west side of the metro area. Go Washington County.
Yes, I love that. I love saying that we're trying to be the versions of our 13-year-old selves that we wish we could be, because I did not know you could be non-binary when I was 13. And I think if I knew that, my life might have been a little bit different and maybe a little bit less painful. And so I'm so happy we get to have this conversation, and hopefully more people will be exposed to that being true, and we can have more people living a life that is not, traumatic or hard because they don't know that that even is an option. So thank you for saying that. Our next question is, what does your gender and gender expression mean to you?
I'll go. For me, I think like being non-binary and exploring my trans masc identity, which is, it's newer for me. I just started T in this early February, so that's been doing great things for me. But it's really allowed me to truly shine and be unapologetically queer. And I'm happy. And yeah, it's great. And I love how it reflects my work. And I'm just here to be myself and intimidate white people. I'm just going to keep referencing that. So get ready. I'll pass it on to whoever wants to talk.
So I
Oh,
can.
Vashti, go.
Nope, Shannon, go ahead.
Oh, we're gonna play this awkward. You go, I go. I totally agree with Rio. I think, being a year post-op, I've never been more comfortable in my skin than I have this past year. I actually had some friends grab drinks with me, and they said, and because of COVID, and I got my surgery right in the middle of like where it was safe to get surgery, and then right afterwards it was not safe. So a lot of people are still seeing me for the first time post-op. And they said, this is the most comfortable and like happy and relaxed you've ever been in a setting. And so I was so excited to go buy a suit jacket off the rack and not have to have it tailored for the first time. At least in that way. My arms are still super short, so like all suit jackets are always going to be too long for me. But it was awesome, and being able to walk into places and buy clothes and present in a way that is non-constricting and incredibly comfortable for me, especially as somebody who spent 4 years going to a Catholic all-girls preparatory school in Sacramento, California, where I wore a skirt for 4 years. Not exactly a lot of trauma, clearly. But I think it's also, I'm the punk kid. I've kept my emo. My birthday gift to my wife was MCR tickets. Like we are still those kids. And so in a lot of ways, my non-binary identity and my expression are my fuck you, are my punk kid. It's the adult expression. It's the more integrated expression of all of those things I felt as a teenager and as a young adult. And so I think that's, to me, where my gender identity and expression are really starting to bring me a lot of joy.
So my take is a little different. I am obviously very femme presenting, and apparently I don't look queer. When I walk into LGBTQ plus spaces, people are always like, "You're an ally," and I'm like, "I'm an us." Nice to meet you. So I think for me, it has been the like letting go of this like I don't look queer enough bullshit. And as my therapist calls it, I'm entering my second queering. So very much doing all the things that 13-year-old, 17-year-old me, and wearing the things that I wanted to wear, and just kind of like living in my truth in the way that feels good to me. And sometimes that means I have my lashes done, my nails done, my hair long, and I'm wearing a dress. And sometimes that means I'm wearing a tie. And so just really starting to change my own wardrobe and be more aligned with the me that I know I am.
I realized in my intro I didn't give any of my qualifiers as to how I'm queer, so I can start with that. I'm transgender, I'm non-binary, and most importantly, I'm two-spirit. So for me, my gender identity is very much tied to my cultural identity and the role that I play in my community, and is very tied to my spirituality. And it wasn't always like that. It was a process to get to where I'm at. There was times in my life where I identified as a woman. Now that I identify as non-binary, I still identify as being a mother. That's something that, you know, I did as a woman, and something that I didn't feel I had the right to use. And then kind of came full circle with things. So I think, you know, my gender has been ever changing, and I hope it continues to change as I'm able to embrace different parts of my femininity and the parts of my gender that have been really weaponized against me and used in violent ways. The way that I express my gender outwardly is just like what makes me feel most comfortable. I was very awkward prior to transitioning because I've been 6 feet tall since I was 14 years old. I have big hands, I have big feet, and so transitioning worked well in my favor because clothes, you know, fits better for me when I shop men's clothes than ever when I was looking for women's clothes. I would, you know, I have a lot of friends that do drag, and so now that I feel like I've gotten more comfortable in my gender identity, it would be fun to maybe gender bend a bit more and, you know, tap into that feminine side. It's still something that's really scary to me. I feel like when you spend time with me though, you're able to, you know, and if you're really taking the time to see me beyond the exterior, you really do see the woman and the feminine and those parts of myself that I feel like I hold with a better balance. Yeah. Oh, and then I guess I could add too, I also had top surgery a number of years ago. It was in 2015, and I've been on hormones for, in February, it'll be a decade. So my life looks radically different than it did in 2012 or 2013. I paroled from prison the second time, and it was when I was in prison serving my second sentence that I decided to transition as like, my life really isn't worth living anyways, so maybe this will help. And if it doesn't, it doesn't matter anyways. I'm glad I took the chance and, you know, was able to get through a year of being homeless, my first year of transition, and basically on a suicide mission, because now things have come full circle now that I'm like getting to the 10-year mark of like being out of prison, 10-year mark of transitioning, all this stuff. Now I'm getting to help people that have similar lived experience to me. So it's been really, really awesome.
Thank you for sharing. I love hearing the way that everybody can make gender their own experience, and there's no one way to do gender. And as we know, the gender binary does not work for a lot of us. And when you step outside of that, you get to make gender whatever you want it to be. And as we can see, there's so many ways to live and so many ways we can be happy if we can explore that. So thank you for sharing. And Lucas, I think you're transitioning us really well in talking about missions and the way that we do our work from our mission. So I would love to hear about how you're doing your work from your missions.
I can jump us off with this one. So I'd say my mission for my community is to see people be able to live self-determined lives. My role in the community is to help people feel empowered, to help people know that healing is possible, to remind people that healing and forgiveness is also possible. I feel like a lot of people within our community, and depending on the multiple intersecting identities that somebody may have, live with a lot of stigma and a lot of shame. This is still really, really prevalent, and our youth are under so much attack right now, from a policy and legislative standpoint, and also from a number of other, forces in the world. And so for me, I think it's like reminding people, giving people the permission to just be their full authentic self, to remember that like the most powerful thing that you can do is be unafraid and unapologetic. So that's what I do a lot with people when I'm doing like capacity building and working with community members. I'm like, I don't have the solutions for you. I know what worked for me. I'm happy to share those things, but really you're the one that has the answers and the truth for like what your purpose is. And so that's really what I try to uplift. As far as the work that I do, the past year, I've been spending a lot of time on suicide prevention, specifically within the Black and Indigenous community, because mental health in general, the conversation tends to be very, very white. And we know because of the type of historical, intergenerational, and racial trauma that we experience on a daily basis, that mental health is something that our communities are highly impacted by, especially the past 2 years since the pandemic. So I've kind of redirected my focus towards suicide prevention and, elevating topics around mental health, because we need to destigmatize being able to talk about stuff that we're taught in professional space is not okay. Outside of that, I've been doing a lot of capacity building for an organization called Beyond These Walls that does prison reentry services for members of the LGBT community in Oregon and Washington. And so my 3-year goal right now is to figure out how to start purchasing property and getting reentry houses for members of the community. And my long-term goal, when I was, homeless on the streets, there was no services for me, and I'm getting really, really close to being able to house trans people. So that's like my big thing, and I think I'm like real close. So yeah, that's it for me.
I'll tag on a little bit just because my focus has a lot to do with behavioral health. I, like Liana said, has spent almost a decade in behavioral health. About 5 of those years was providing direct care and community-based programs. And what I saw was exactly what Lucas is talking about. The ways in which we're not diagnosed, the way in which our diagnoses are labeled as behaviors, as attention seeking, as criminality, really makes me sick. And since I lived in that world for a long time and I saw the hard work that people were doing, and there's so many people of color doing direct care, but nobody's a boss. I was the only one. I was always the only middle manager. And so I'm taking what I know of what the field of psychiatry, behavioral health, addiction counseling has done to us, what has been integrated into the workplace. And again, like I said, we have no choice right now but to engage in capitalism. And I want to call to task the folks that are creating these disgustingly unsafe environments that we all work in. And trying to make it as safe as possible for the people that walk through the doors. With my organization, I work with the leaders. I don't start with the people at the bottom, because the people at the bottom already know what's up. And I start with the presidents, the CEOs, still on a small scale right now, but I am shooting for big. If we have to go to work, it needs to be as safe as possible.
I will add on to that. Thank you, Vashti. I appreciate that. So again, I work in real estate. I have a lot to say about it. It's really challenging to stay in it myself, just because it goes against a lot of things that I personally believe in. And there's just, just being rooted in white supremacy, and there's a lot of greed, obviously. It's just, I believe everybody deserves shelter and stability, but that's not the way things are right now. So in the meantime, I just like to advocate and best represent fellow queer BIPOC clients as best as I can, just because, it's scary. It is fucking scary. And I want them to feel as comfortable as possible. And I don't sugarcoat anything. So Liana can probably tell you too. So we worked a little bit together, and hopefully in the future we will, when you're ready. But yeah, I cuss and do all the things. Thanks, Uma. I see you. I just sold Uma and Alfonso, her partner, a home, and congratulations to them. They deserve it. That was really hard. But yeah, we need people like myself out here helping these people and getting into homes. It's really hard. So it's a struggle, but I'm glad that I'm doing it. I'm glad I'm helping people out. And that's, at the end of the day, if I can help people find housing, that's great. So eventually I want to get to a place where I can also be able to buy a home that houses trans kids of youth. That's the ultimate goal. I have a few other trans people in the industry that I want to work with. So there's an ultimate goal there, but in the meantime, just helping out other BIPOC or queer clients is amazing. So that's what I do.
That awkward moment when I'm the white kid in the room that works for government. And I just have to own that, right? And I just have to say that, right? Like, I admit, like, it's been really hard the past few, I mean, it's been hard the past couple of years, but it's been really hard, especially with everything that's been going on and the attacks against our community, to wake up and go walk into the hallowed halls that are the seed and the catalyst a lot of times, unfortunately, for all of these things. And they are the legitimizers and the rationalizing entity that keeps white supremacy and all of the terrible things in the world uplifted. So I just have to own that. I have to admit that that's the world I live in. I am blessed and humbled and lucky enough that I work for a mayor who is incredibly inclusive. I've seen some shout outs in the chat. For the first time, Beaverton City is flying the pride flag during Pride Month. First time ever in 2022. So obviously our building, our place needs a lot of work. But I would not continue to work for who I work for and show up and go to work every day if I didn't think and I didn't believe that my values and my mission, especially for my community, weren't aligned with my mayors and with my bosses. And I've been lucky and privileged enough to be in that situation. But at times it's hard, because while my boss is incredibly inclusive and my boss is doing a lot of really good work, the city is a bureaucratic mess, and it's a huge, it's a bulwark against progress. But doing the work that I do for the Westside Queer Resource Center and being the board chair and helping grow this organization that's going to make Washington County more inclusive, like, that's really where my mission is. Like, that's what, on days when it's hard, on days when we pass city budgets that aren't maybe awesome, I try to find the time and the energy to then pivot to go do, what I need to do for my nonprofit. My wife and I have 25 boxes of clothes that have been donated for affirming gender clothing swaps and clothing closets, and we're bringing all of them to Pride. And we have a fitness center that's raising $1,000 for us right now. And like, all of these weird things that I get to do in this other part of my life really help me to align my mission with my work, especially on days when it's hard, in the 9 to 5, to find that time or to find that joy in all of that.
Thank you for sharing that. I think, hearing you talk about doing this work on the outside of your job. I spent most of my earlier years volunteering my time and working for jobs that didn't have a mission. And so now being able to have a mission in my work is really great. But I spent all of my earlier years volunteering. And so being able to marry those two things is so great. And so hearing other people living through their mission is just, it continues to inspire me to keep pushing. So I appreciate all of you for all of the work that you're doing. And I am excited to continue to work with you and be in community with you as we push this forward. I know that there are so many challenges for people who are queer, non-binary, trans. It's the challenges are apparent, and I don't think we have to dig into them too much, but I would love to hear what you would love to see the future of being non-binary or gender fluid or gender curious or trans in the workplace. What would you like to see that evolve to be?
A non-issue. Like, that's my answer. People can just live their fucking lives.
And go to the bathroom. I think normalized, right?
Yes.
Like just normalized. I have one bathroom in the entire city that I can use when I work in the building. I work on the 5th floor, and the only bathroom that I can access as a staff member is on the 1st floor behind 2 hallways next to the loading dock. It's also the only bathroom for those staff that work down there. So you can imagine the awkward moment in that very tiny hallway. But normalized, just normalized. Everything from being able to go pee, it happens. I need to pee, to the paperwork. Like I can't tell you how many, and I think all of us know this, but just normalized in a way in which it's a non-issue. It's not an issue, but it's also thought through and intentional. Because I think I've had some colleagues that are like, well, we could just make the women's restroom on the 5th floor like gender neutral. And I'm like, I get what you're saying. I understand what you're trying to do, but that's not the point. So I think it's normalized and not an issue, but in an intentional way.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Because it being normalized and not being, so much of a other situation, but also embrace the shit out of us, because you should. and the people before us, right, and after us. So I think that's really important. And I also think there being opportunities in our workplaces being prioritized for that, and especially the queer people of color, the queer trans people of color, yeah, you should give them that. There shouldn't be any questions. So normalize it with a little flair added to it.
For me, I'd like to see stronger investment. There was a recent study that was put out by McKinsey and Company that found that trans and gender nonconforming people tend to make 42% less income, even when they have equal or greater education than their colleagues. That's something that I have experienced firsthand. I talk about this a lot when in professional spaces around organizational change. There needs to be incentive where, folks that come from historically marginalized communities that don't start at the same point are shown by their employers that there's an actual investment. So when we're talking about, hiring in Black or Indigenous or other folks of color, people from the queer community, what are you actually doing to put your money where your mouth is? Are you creating benefits packages that are trans inclusive? Are you, bearing in mind the specific things that we need around therapeutic support? Are you allowing your employees to take time during the work week to pursue their mental wellness? Stuff like that, to me, is that has a lot more weight on what my value is in the workforce to the people that I'm working with, more than inclusion or people getting my pronouns right. My life expectancy is 33 and a half. Okay, so if I make it another 2 years, I have exceeded statistically how I'm supposed to be alive. How is my community, how is the place that I'm showing up to work recognizing my positionality and recognizing the challenges that I face, so that when I come to work, I can give the best quality of work, knowing that, you know, what I bring is unique to what anybody else can bring. Nobody else can bring what it is that I bring to the table. So I would really like to see a stronger investment in, you know, providing reparations to communities that have been excluded and that don't have equal access to a number of things, like purchasing homes, as Rio mentioned, you know, mental health services, being able to have accessible services within the building, whether it's the bathroom or whether it's other accessibility things. You know, there's just a lot of gaps when it comes to equal investment for people that are in communities that don't often get their needs met.
Yes. I feel like if y'all are the ones pushing these missions, then people better watch out. They better watch their backs, because we're coming for them. We are coming to make that difference with these missions. We are on our last question that I have. So if there's any questions that you want to ask, please feel free to put them in the chat. We will ask this last question and then do final thoughts and any Q&A that we might have in the chat.
Liana, I had a quick
Yeah.
question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Katie, I see your comment there. I just want to say I used to work at Portland Works Real Estate. Nothing against Jen Sar. I would just, as a person of color in this industry, please, if you maybe want to deter working with Portland Works Real Estate, that's all I have to say. So just want to throw that out there. Nothing against you, Katie, or Jen Sar, but just want to throw that out there. That's it. Thank you.
Community care. I mean, sometimes it's telling people the deal. Yeah. You know, I always think that people want to stigmatize what they say is gossip, but really it's community care of talking about the ways that we've been caused harm in certain communities. So I appreciate you being willing to say that. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I didn't want to, I wasn't trying to, that wasn't like a call out at all. It was just like, shit, I have to say something. It's just like, please don't,
Yeah.
please do not. Yeah.
Yes. So last question. I would love to hear, what advice would you give to a young non-binary person who hopes to move their career forward with a mission? So I'll say that again because a little gappy there. What advice would you give to a young non-binary person who hopes to move their career forward with a mission?
First thing I can think of is just be, again, like unapologetically yourself, even if it's fucking hard and scary. Because it took a lot for me to even, like, I was super awkward too as a younger, you know, queer kid, and one of the only people out in my school, and it was super terrifying. But just like, yeah, just be your fucking self, even if it's fucking scary, and that's it, you know. That's all I can say.
I had to write it down or it'll drop out of my brain. To the point that Rio said, is that it's scary, but it's also just as scary to think about what life is going to be like if you don't pursue what you want. I think holding your integrity and your values and whatever that means to you, if that means religion, if that means spirituality, if that means family, whether that be blood or by what you create, protect yourself and rest. A lot of us are not afforded rest. And to remember that you have earned rest just as much as you've earned anything else in this world.
I'll jump in. I think one thing, just being completely honest with young professionals, is to realize that often the people that you think are going to be your supporters or be on your side are going to be the first ones to tear you down, and those will be people within your community. I learned the hard way, and I had a mentor tell me, not all skin folk are kinfolk. And I think that, you know, whether you're in the LGBT community or within, you know, the BIPOC community, it's something to really be aware of. You have to always question power and ask yourself, how did this person get into that position of power in the first place? I agree with a lot of the things that Vashti said as well about keeping your integrity, resting, really, prioritizing yourself, because at the end of the day, capitalism will chew you up and spit you out, and it won't think twice. So you have to protect yourself first and foremost. You have to have your back, and keep the people close that really are in your corner and want to see you succeed, not people that are gonna try and compete with you or anything like that. Like, if I'm not winning, then nobody's winning. And that's the way that I see it. If Shannon's not winning, if Rio's not winning, if Vashti's not winning, if Liana's not winning, then I'm not winning. There's work to be done. Anybody that tries to compete with you, probably not your friend. So, just protect yourself. Yeah.
Oh, how to follow up all of that wisdom. So I think my first piece of advice would be seek out your history. Because for me, the first time I learned about queer and trans history was the first time I felt validated and I felt strong. And I felt confident, because I was like, oh, wait, my community's done some shit. We haven't always been left to the waste. Like, we haven't been passive. Like, we've done and created some awesome things. My other thing is, like, in a real talk, stick around. Stay with us. Because again, if we lose you, we lose that future. We lose an important part of our family and our community. I'm on the verge of turning 30, which is an age I never thought I'd make. I didn't think I'd see 18. I didn't think I'd see 21. And the other thing is, not only stay true to your values, but seek out those who agree with your values and actually align with your values. Because if you lose your values, if you find yourself working in a place that doesn't align, I think that's the quickest way to lose yourself, and that's our quickest way to lose you. And always remember, you were perfectly created and perfect, and keep holding on to that.
Love to hear it. I appreciate you all so much. I'm not seeing any questions coming through the chat, so I just want to use this time to give anybody on the panel an opportunity to share anything about their organization, anything coming up for you. If you want to put your LinkedIn in the chat, if people want to connect, just a space to kind of grow our community. For myself, I have a 6-part series for LGBTQ plus topics coming up at the end of June, which I will pop into the chat for y'all to, it hasn't been released to the public yet, so this is early registration. And it's going to be a 6-part series just unpacking different parts of the LGBTQ community and the way that things come up for us. And so I'll pass it along. What's going on for y'all with Pride and anything coming up? See lots of links coming through the chat. So,
well, our month is packed out here on the west side. So West Side Queer Resource Center, we got a lot going on. We're going to be at Hillsborough Pride June 11th. It's all day at Aranco Station, which is accessible by Max. Even those of you that live over in Portland, you can take the Max. You can come say hi to us. We're pretty cool out here, I promise. And then we're going to be at Portland Pride, both the 18th and 19th, even though I have very strong feelings about the 19th being a Pride Day. But we will be at the waterfront with a booth, and then we will be here for Beaverton Pride June 26th. We're going to have a Pride Parade. Our city council is going to be in it for the first time. So we are going to be all over Pride over here on the west side. I dropped our organization's website in there along with my LinkedIn. So we're going to be pretty much anywhere and everywhere Pride is happening this month. So feel free to join us at any of the big 3 weekends.
So I too dropped my website and my LinkedIn in there on the 8th and 9th of this month. Specifically the 9th, I did a presentation with an organization called Integrating Women Leaders. And I talk to the leaders about how they can keep up in the world with the demands and needs that we all have. When I'm not doing muggle things, I am performing. And on June 15th at the Clinton Street Theater in Portland, there's a show called Melange, and it is a BIPOC and queer show, and it is the first show back live. So I will try and find that link before we go.
It was so great hearing all of y'all. Thank you so much. And thanks for letting me speak as well. I just threw a direct link to my Realtor page, just in case if you know anyone or if you're looking to buy or sell yourself and you want to work with a queer, non-binary, BIPOC agent. I promise I will help you as best as I can. But other than that, I don't have anything specific for Pride. I am just going to go be gay as fuck. And just yeah, you know, for everything, it's like all those memes where it's like, stop, I'm gay. And just like tripping over sidewalk crack, I'm gay. Why would you do that? That's it. Thanks, everyone.
I think this might be the only like pride related thing I'm doing. I am gearing up. We started this thing called it was a suicide prevention summit for the Black and Indigenous communities last year. And then this year we're doing it slightly different, but my colleague who I've been working on this project with, we're gonna be doing a coin launch. So kind of like a sobriety chip, we've created a number of different box sets for celebrating surviving a suicide attempt. So we're gonna be doing a release for that later this month, and then events throughout next month, because next month is BB Moore Campbell Awareness Month, or Minority Mental Health Awareness. They like to whitewash and, you know, erase the work that Black femmes do. So it is BB Moore Campbell month. I'm also going to be offering, I've been designing some leadership, anti-racism, leadership development that's rooted in abolition, transformative justice, trauma-informed practice. And I'm going to be offering that for free to members of the BIPOC community that are low income. So I'm going to be doing that on Zoom virtually. And giving those. So if that's something that you know folks that could be interested in, check out my website. You can send me an email through there and I can get you plugged in with that. Yeah. And then I'm trying to like post more on LinkedIn. So if other stuff comes up, you might be able to find me post stuff there, but I'm not on social media. So I don't know what else to tell you, but yep, that's it for me.
Well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your stories. And, you know, it's so inspiring to be surrounded by people who are part of my community, who are just doing the work and pushing forward and being unapologetically yourselves. It keeps me motivated and excited to keep doing this work. And all of you have been part of my community, some of you for longer, some of you for I've just met you, but we've, you know, quickly become, you know, people that work together. So I feel so grateful for all of you, and I hope that we all stay connected, everybody in the chat, follow each other on LinkedIn, and keep this community going, and I can't wait to see you again. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for getting us together, Liana.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you, Liana.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Leah.
thank you so much.
Good to meet y'all.
Do you want to stay on for a sec? Okay, I think that's just